Hello, my name is Sean Tremolin, and I'm the Agriculture and Natural Resources Agent here in Scott County. Today we're going to talk a bit about how to start your own plants from seed. But before we get into the how, first I want to ask why bother? And so if you think about growing tomatoes, for example, the seedlings can get pretty pricey. And so if you're just planting a few, maybe in a container garden or a small garden bed, then that's not maybe a big deal. But if you're trying to grow a lot of plants, maybe you want to put some away and you have 10, 50, 100 plus plants, that can add up really fast. And so it's cheaper. You can go ahead and buy a pack of seeds, maybe 25, 50 seeds for a few dollars versus a few dollars for a seedling. You also are open to trying a lot more varieties, different cultivars. And so here I have a picture of just colorful peppers all over the place. And so if you go to the store, you can maybe get a green, and if you're lucky, one of the purple ones. But you don't have a lot of variety. But if you go ahead and buy your own seeds, you can research it and figure out, oh, I want to go ahead and have one that tastes like this or looks like this. Maybe it's good for this kind of cooking option. You're also able to use your own seeds. So that's one where you can start saving your own seeds. Maybe that's when you have some sort of plant or vegetable that you really enjoy. You can go ahead and save it, or maybe you want to go ahead and reduce costs. You want to buy seeds each year, and so just go ahead and save your own. And lastly, it's fun. While you're stuck inside in winter, looking outside with all the ice and snow, you can instead go ahead and start getting your hands dirty a little bit and start playing around and planting stuff and getting that gardening kick. So as we go into it and think about some of the planting things before you buy, before you jump into it, think about a few of these things. First, you need to have your seeds, and so you need to buy them. There's a lot of different sources. Prices can be variant on what you're buying. Are they a generic seed? Is it a popular type? Is it unique? Is it certified organic? All those play factors into it. It's important to go ahead and buy it early because you never know, especially in the last few years with all the increase in gardening from the pandemic. Seeds can go ahead and be hard to find, and so it's good to go ahead and buy them ahead of time. Though don't buy them too far in advance and don't overbuy, because seeds are living, and so as they get older, there's going to be a less chance of them to germinate or to grow over time. And so that's why it's best to go ahead and kind of buy seeds and have them used up within a 2 to 3 year period. If you do have extras, that's not a problem. Just go ahead and store them in some sort of container that's airtight, and put them in a cool place such as a refrigerator. And then also, while you're thinking of the seeds, are they best to plant directly into the ground in your garden, or should you start them indoors? And so there are some plants that don't transplant well, and so keeping that in mind before you start all these seedlings in your house and then have to go through that struggle. Next is requirements for germination. And so you can see this is very similar to requirements just for a plant in general: water, light, oxygen, and heat. And so as you think about water, go ahead and keep them moist. It's good to not overwater, not underwater, just kind of keep it equal. Don't have that water fluctuate a lot. Um, for light, it's important to have light. That it's dependent on the plant to grow. Um, Weak access can lead to something that's called leggy, where plants and seedlings go ahead and get really, really like tall, and that's not necessarily good. Tall fast, because that just they're very weak. They can fall over easily. And that's one where they're pretty much what they're trying to do is they're searching for their light. They're spending all their energy to go ahead and grow tall just so they can reach light. And so instead, it's good to have uh, um, more short, stout seedlings that start, go ahead and have that good structure. And so that's why sometimes it's important to add supplemental lighting. And so we'll go ahead and talk in a bit about it, but you can add lights, grow lights, to um, help give more light off. Oxygen, so that's one where, just like us, they do require to breathe and have oxygen. So that's one of the reasons why overwatering can be bad. that can go ahead and make it so they don't have that oxygen that they need to germinate. Also heat. Um, and so optimum range for plants are generally in that kind of 65 to 75 range degree. So that's where it works out well because most houses are kind of in that range. But potting mixes or soilless seed starting mixtures can vary about 5 degrees difference than indoor air temperatures. And depending where you have it, maybe if it's in a drafty area or close to a window, that can lead to that area being colder. There are some options such as heating mats to help heat up the soil, but you don't want to use anything that's not made for that. So like a heating pad that you put on your arm or on your back or something. You don't want to use that. Just if you think there needs to be more heat, then buy a specific heating mat for seed starting. And then think about the location. So as we talked about, they need to have warmer areas, 60 plus degrees with no cold drafts. So thinking about maybe not having them in the cold part of your house, keeping them safe from traffic or pets moving around. Cats love seedlings, and they'll go ahead and tear them up very fast. I know that from experience, and so definitely have it someplace that where people are our little ones aren't going to mess with it. Making sure there's plenty of room to grow, so they're not constrained and don't start having bad form or structure. Um, and so that's one where a lot of these windowsills can be pretty rough to work with because they're colder and the light may fluctuate. But there are some options where it's not impossible to grow them that way, and I'll talk about it in a second. Looking at containers, so making sure to use the right size for the right age of the plant, and so just one where you don't want to have a container that's too small for the plant, otherwise the roots can start to get bound, or they just kind of start wrapping in on each other, and that's not good. And so that's why it's okay to transplant seedlings over time as they need more space. There's no problem with that. It's much better to do that than have root bound issues. And then the media that you use. So that's the kind of, I guess, soil in quotations. A lot of times it's recommended to use a soilless seed starting mixture because if you think about it, if you went outside and just got some garden soil and used that, there's a lot of weed seeds. Whether you may have gotten rid of the weeds, but there's a lot of just weed seeds that are always there. And then also potential pathogens. So all of those can either compete with your seedling or lead to having disease and kill it before it has a chance to get started well. So just keeping free of those insect diseases and weed seeds by using a soilless seed starting mixture, which you can just buy from box stores online. You want to have something that's nice, fine, uniform, well aerated, loose media. So that's where also using just garden soil, it may be really hard, not kind of that loose, fine feel to it. You want to have something that holds water well, just because those seeds need to have that non-fluctuating amount of water. Now, one thing is, as you use soil seed starting mixtures, they will require fertilization because they don't hold a lot of nutrients in the media. So go ahead and once they get larger and they start to get their true leaves, because they'll start out with their not true leaves, and then afterwards they'll add some on. As they get to that stage, then you can start adding fertilizer to them. Maybe like with a fertilizer solution that dissolves in water. And so now you kind of know, like, the preparation for it. Thinking about when to plant. And so to do that, it's important to know your frost state and what you're planting. With what you're planting, you can go ahead and have different groups that require different things, like the cool weather versus warm weather crops. And so the cool weather ones, as it sounds, are hardy, and they can go ahead and be planted, depending on what they are, potentially up to 6 weeks before your frost date, because they can go ahead and have cold spells and handle that pretty well. The warm weather crops, on the other hand, if there's a frost or a freeze, they have a really rough time and they can die um, from chilling damage. And so it's important to go ahead and plant those while to when it's frost dates or past, when the risk for having those cold weather events are kind of past the area, which I know is kind of hard to predict the weather, but we got some tools to help with that. And then also just looking at your seed packets, a lot of times they'll go ahead and give you information, um, plants, so many weeks ahead of time, how long it takes for maturity, um, other growing um, requirements of your plant. So as we look at the frost dates, here you can see have both spring and fall, but I'll go ahead and focus on the spring. So what that's saying is, like the spring 90%, means that there's a 90% chance that there's going to be a frost freeze after April 9th. So if you plant a warm weather crop like tomatoes or peppers on April 9th, there's going to be a 90% chance that there's a frost freeze event after planting, and then your plants will not survive, more than likely. And you can go ahead and do some stuff with frost and freezes, cover them with sheets and that, but that's a bit early for planting them. And so as we go over a bit, at the spring 10%, May 15th, that means that there's only a 10% chance, or 1 out of 10 years, where there would be a frost freeze after that time. And so you don't have to plant it at that point, but you're going to be reducing your risk of losing plants by planting them May 15th or afterwards for the Oneida area. And that's one where it's going to vary where you are. It can vary pretty easily throughout even just our county, with all the nooks and crannies, hills and valleys. Some areas may have a little bit of a lag to warm up, or maybe they'll warm up a little bit earlier than other parts of the county. So use these as general guides, but then kind of watching your area, um, keeping records. Go ahead and maybe if you have a calendar, write down, okay, here's the last frost or freeze, and then you can reference that in future years, and it'll be helpful as you go ahead and grow stuff. And so here's some pictures of seed packets, and you can see there's a lot of information on there. Like on the left, the tomato talks about, how much sun it needs, the days to harvest, the depth to plant it, the seed, also when to start it indoors, 6 to 8 weeks before planting. So go ahead and read your seed packets. Look online for the variety that you're using, because they'll go ahead and give you a lot of information that you need. And this is important to go ahead and tailor the conditions to what you're trying to grow. And so some of the different methods that you can use. So here's a few options. You can use a grow light. So that's what those fluorescent lights are. You can go ahead and use, you don't have to buy specifically grow bulbs, but you want to make sure that the light bulbs are rated for 6,500 K on a CCC rating. And those are pretty ideal because they are pretty close to natural light. And then also having your lights being able to move up and down is important, because your plants are going to grow, and trying to keep within that kind of optimum distance from them, because if you're too close, you'll go ahead and burn them. If you're too far away, then they'll start to get leggy and not be as healthy. You can use windowsills. As I said, there are challenges, because if you think it might be colder there, may not have a lot of light, but you can use them. And so what works best is typically if you have a south-facing window, make sure it's bright, it's not blocked by trees or anything, and then a larger area. And then just making sure to keep a few plants there and not overdo it, and just figure out what works best for your specific windowsill. Then also you can winter sow. And what that is the picture on the bottom right there of milk jugs and 2 liters and other plastic containers. You can actually plant seeds in those recycled materials and then leave them outside without much work to do, and you'll get seedlings. And so these are ones where people will plant them as early as December. uh, and then just kind of leave it there. In essence, what you're doing is making a little greenhouse, and then once the temperatures get right, they'll go ahead and germinate and sprout, and people have a lot of successes. There's some great resources online, and I'll have resources relating to this video linked in the description. But um, that's one where it's a nice low-cost method where you don't have to buy a whole grow light system. You don't have to have a specific windowsill. As long as you just have a small amount of space to place these outside in the sun, then you'll do great and be able to find some milk jugs. But that's one where next we're going to go ahead and I'll do a quick demo to show you how to make these winter sowing jugs.
All right. Now that we've talked a little bit about what winter sowing is, let's go ahead and jump into making a container for it. So you can use a lot of different containers. A common one is milk jug, but you can use plastic salad boxes that salad mixes come in, 2 liters. There's a lot of different options. But today we're going to use a milk jug. And so first go ahead and remove the cap, and then that's a great way to let water into the system because you want to let some rain and snow in so then it doesn't get too dry. Now you have the cap off, go ahead and wash it out, use some warm soapy water, get any food remnants, any bad smells, get it nice and clean before we get working on it. Next, you're going to go ahead and put some drainage holes in the bottom. And so as we talked about, too much water is a bad thing, so you want to have some places for it to escape so you don't drown your seeds. So go ahead and put about 6 to 8 holes in the bottom. And then after that, you're going to go ahead and work on cutting it so you can have access inside. And so you don't want to cut it completely in half, you want to leave a little bit. So this little bit under the handle here, you want to leave that. So what it's going to look like is something like this. So you can see that most of this is cut, but I left this hinge right here on the plastic. So then it's easy to close up, easy to seal later on the process. Alright, so now we have our drainage holes, we have a cut. The next step is to put some soil in. So you can use a lot of different soils, you can use potting mixes, seed starting mixtures. You just want to have something that's nice and fluffy. So then you have something for your seeds to go in. Garden soils are not great. So go ahead and add about 3 to 4 inches of soil in there. And after that, go ahead and wet it down because it's going to be dry and you want to make sure before you put your seeds in that it's nice and have a consistent moisture throughout the whole soil. So go ahead and wet it down really well. You have your drainage holes, so don't worry about overwatering. Just go ahead and water it down, get it nice and damp. And after that, then you're going to plant your seeds. And so depending on what you're planting, depends on how far the depth of the soil, or depth into the soil the seed needs to be. Just go ahead and read your seed packet, or if it doesn't have anything, the general rule is about 2 to 3 widths of the seed is how deep it goes. So go ahead and put it in. Make sure that there's some soil on top, and you can pat it down, and then you're ready to label. So you want to go ahead and have labeling in here, and it's great to put it inside because if you go ahead and you can write Sharpie on the outside, but you run the risk of it potentially wearing down in the sun where you can't read it anymore. So that's where a lot of people use little pieces of wood or pieces of blinds, like the window blinds, little cut off pieces, and then write it on and stick it in here. But make sure you have some way of labeling so you know what you planted, so you're not trying to guess what it is later on. Now you have it labeled, it's all planted, it's wet. Go ahead and close it up and then seal it. And you'll go ahead and put some duct tape or something like that around so it's sealed up. You don't want it opening up. This is going to be a greenhouse and you don't want it to let the heat out and get blown open in the wind. So go ahead and get it nice and snug, sealed down, and then after that you're ready to put it outside. Go ahead and find a place outside that's has some sunlight because of course we want our seeds to get some food from the sun. Then also make sure it's out in the weather. You don't want to put it under a porch or somewhere protected because if we don't have moisture coming in, then it's going to get really dry and it's not going to let the seeds grow as they should be.
Well, thank you so much for watching the video and spending time listening to me. If you have any questions about how to start your seeds, feel free to reach out to me. Here's my contact information. You can call that number. That's the extension office's number, and ask for me, and or ask your questions, and we'll go ahead and help you out. Or feel free to email me. I hope you all enjoy and have good luck growing your own seeds.